are more than 60 million refugees, asylum seekers and internally displaced persons in the world. 10 years ago, there were nearly half of that at 38 million, a figure that was falling. We spoke with Mohammed Abu Asaker from the UNHCR on the current refugee crisis, specifically in relation to the Middle East region, and how relief organisations are coping with what can only be described as a global catastrophe that's getting worse. Sadly, the Middle East is producing and hosting the largest number of refugees and displaced persons in the world. Speaking earlier in October to the UNHCR's Executive Committee, UN High Commissioner for Refugees Antonio Guterres stated that one of the consequences of this has been a shrinking of humanitarian space, which is making work for organisations like UNHCR more difficult and hazardous. So how are relief agencies coping on the ground?
It's very difficult. This is a global emergency, and for this such situation, it requires unprecedented efforts from the international community. We need a collective effort from the whole international community to respond to such crisis, and that requires advocacy, requires providing refuge and protection for people forced to flee their homes, and humanitarian aid. And without the collective efforts and cooperation from all the international agencies and the whole world, we will not be able to cope within such emergencies. Today is the largest numbers we have ever seen, and this means that we are talking about women, children, and minors, children separated from their families, and they need protection, they need support. This is where the collective international efforts need to come together to respond to such situations. 15 wars have been started in the world in the last 5 years. 3 in the Middle East, 8 in Africa, 3 in Asia, and 1 in Europe. Within the Syria situation, it became the largest humanitarian crisis since the World War II, with more than 4 million refugees in the neighboring countries and more than 7.6 internally displaced people inside Syria. This is a significant number, and Syria, very sadly to say, became the largest in terms of producing refugees and internally displaced people.
In the past, agencies such as UNHCR have struggled to put the issue of displacement on the global political agenda. However, the dramatic events on the beaches and borders of Europe this summer have undoubtedly propelled the issue into the hearts and minds of the international community. That and the fact that the world is seeing its worst refugee crisis since World War II. So what would be some of the short and long-term solutions to the current regional refugee crisis, not only for the refugees themselves, but also to reduce pressure on the countries that are taking them in?
Neighboring countries have been very generous in hosting more than 4 million refugees in the last 4 years. And in terms of continuing the support, the international community is invited to provide support to neighboring countries. This financial assistance and support will enable the countries to keep going, coping, and it's part of the burden sharing. And talking about Syrian in the neighboring countries, after 4 years, their saving will run out and their jewelry been sold off. And the number of people in debt has been increased to provide adequate support for their families. Without the financial support to the international organization helping and providing assistance, will not be able to respond to their life-saving needs. So this is for the short and medium solutions, but for the long-term solutions, we believe that political solutions is always the answer. What we provide to the refugees and internally displaced people is only to keep them alive. But this is not the answer, this is not the solution. Without a political solution in their home countries, they will keep being vulnerable.
Now, how are UNHCR's winter relief operations progressing financially Where does it currently stand and how much more is needed?
Well, 2015 has been a very difficult year for UNHCR and for the other international organizations working with the humanitarian situations. The Syria situation, for example, we have asked for an appeal. It's like $5.5 billion for 1 year to provide a life-saving assistance. And after 10 months of the appeal, what we received only 41%. So we're more than half of the appeal being like underfunded. And this will make a direct impact on the refugees in terms of life-saving assistance. There are so many food cuts, like food cuts vouchers, and there are a lot of health expenses being like increased significantly. And the refugees will not be able to respond to all these needs. And we call for the international community to provide adequate assistance, to provide aid, to provide money as soon as possible. That will enable UNHCR and the rest of international organizations to respond to the life-saving needs of the refugees.
In October, the number of sea arrivals, mainly from this region to Greece, hit the 500,000 mark. There is concern that this number will rise as people try to beat the onset of winter. In 2015 alone, more than 3,500 people perished while travelling the Mediterranean Sea in a bid to find safer ground. So why are refugees risking their lives to undertake such perilous journeys? The plight of those travelling by sea was emphasised earlier this year with that image of a young Syrian boy washed up on the Turkish shoreline. It's not the first time an image of a child has influenced public opinion on a particular situation on a global scale, but has the image been a precedent for change?
Aylan photo was very sad photo, and for the whole world been mobilized and shared sympathy towards the humanitarian cause of the Syria situation and the Afghan and Iraq. And Aylan is an example of 3,500 people found dead or missing in the Mediterranean in 2015. And we're talking about 560,000 people just across the Mediterranean to Europe. And the big majority of them came from areas that witness a conflict, like Syria, Iraq, or Afghanistan. And now it's a very harsh winter hitting these people. We have more than 22,000 in the Greek islands. And so many of minor kids and separated children are reported to UNHCR staff and local authorities. And this is a big concern that people, or refugees, let's say, that have been forced to flee their countries and been forced to leave the hosting countries to put their lives in a risk and to give all their fate to smugglers who don't have any mercy and crossing the ocean into reaching out to Europe. This is a big concern to UNHCR. We hope that European countries will come to a moment where they will provide legal entry for all refugees. We want to see refugees arriving in Europe through airplanes, not on risky boats.
Can you explain to us what the conditions are like on these boats? How many people travel on these boats at a time? How much do they actually pay to get on these boats?
The situation is very misery, and it's very sad to say that the big majority of those people have been left behind in neighboring countries as refugees. And within short service been provided to them, they've been forced to pull their kids out of school and to begin the streets to provide and to get money to pay for the smugglers. And they've been doing like dirty jobs and been doing whatever possible to provide money to smugglers who don't have any mercy, and been, let's say, using the needs of those people, like using the humanitarian needs. And when they are in the boat, they just have 50% hope of being alive. And the big majority of those boats get overloaded with people, and we saw women, we saw kids, and the level of safety is very minimal. And reaching out to Europe with nothing but cloths on their shoulders and looking for hope, life, and dignity. And it's very difficult for a person to leave his home country, going to nowhere and going to for unknown, let's say, and just trying to find a life. They're looking for jobs, they're looking for an opportunity in their life. It's very difficult on their dignity to leave their homes and just leave everything behind. Why they are doing this? Just because they lost hope for any solution anytime soon. Because they had received not enough of services from the international organizations. They have been they feel that they've been a burden on the neighboring countries. So this is the time where the international community to come and to do unprecedented efforts and collectively to show support for the refugees, for the neighboring countries, and above all, this is the time of the truth to provide solution for the ongoing conflict inside Syria for over 4 years.
Finally, what are some of the barriers that are stopping countries taking these people in, and is the solution to this global rather than regional?
Well, we believe that political solutions and the roots of the causes of the wars have been always the answer and the solution for the ongoing conflicts. We have been seeing the more than 60 million people of refugees or internally displaced people, and this is a very high number, and we believe that wars been erupted in different parts of the world been like the main cause of this highest number. Without getting a solution for those wars, we're gonna keep seeing the number been increasing. And one of the solutions we provide to refugees that will face a real challenge in terms of protection on their lives back home is to provide resettlement in a third country. And in 2014, UNHCR submitted 103,000 refugees through the resettlement program. And this is the lowest figure in 3 decades compared to the number of refugees globally. And what we see today is an increased number of refugees and a very decreased number of resettlement program. And this does not help solving the problem. We hope that the whole world to share burden of the ongoing conflicts and the ongoing humanitarian situations. Without increasing the number of opportunities of resettlement for the refugees, we're going to see more suffering of those women and children and elderly men.
Now, for those that wish to improve the lives of these Syrian refugees, you can make a donation today to help a family for 1 year through UNHCR's Urgent Lifeline appeal. By simply going to the website link below, you can make a difference.